Imagine your own family trying to steal your future. What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you for their own gain? The next morning, everything changed. The phone rang, and I could feel my heart racing before even looking at the caller ID. It was my mom. Amber, her voice was cold, too calm for my liking. I need you to come home. Now. When I walked into the house, I didn't expect a family meeting. I didn't expect to see my mom sitting there with a smug smile, my siblings on either side, and two lawyers standing like silent soldiers. The tension was suffocating. "We need to talk about Grandpa's estate," my mom said, her eyes scanning me with an unsettling look. "He didn't leave you all of that for you to mess things up. I need you to sign it over. It's for the family." My stomach churned. For the family? I knew exactly what this was. She wanted everything. Grandpa's hard-earned $2 million was supposed to be my future, my inheritance, my legacy. But my mom saw it as just another thing she could control. She thought I would cave. "No," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and determination. "This is mine. Grandpa left it to me, and I'm not signing anything." Her face twisted. "You're making a huge mistake. Do you really think you can handle this? You're too young." I stood firm, refusing to back down. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. It was about my life, my future, and honoring what Grandpa had worked so hard for. The days that followed were a blur of messages and pressure. My mom didn't stop. She sent text after text, calling me selfish, accusing me of tearing the family apart. Craig, my stepdad, left voicemails, his voice dripping with disdain. Rachel, my sister, even joined in, sending me a message in the family group chat, calling me greedy. It felt like a relentless storm. But every time I looked at the inheritance papers, I remembered Grandpa's face. He trusted me to protect what he'd built. I couldn't let my family twist that trust into something ugly. No matter how hard they pushed, I wasn't giving in. Then came the surprise. Jason, my younger brother, knocked on my door one evening. He'd always stayed out of the conflict, trying to keep the peace. But this time, he looked different. There was something in his eyes. Understanding. "I don't care about the money," he said quietly. "But Mom, she's lost it. I've never seen her like this before. She's not herself." Hearing Jason admit that, it was like a weight lifted. I wasn't alone in this. But even as he spoke, my heart still ached with the betrayal. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a family trying to tear me apart for the sake of control. "I'm doing this for Grandpa," I said, my voice steady. "I can't back down." Jason nodded slowly, but his face was filled with uncertainty. I knew what was coming next, and it terrified me. The tension reached its breaking point when my mom called another family unity dinner. I walked into the house, my stomach twisted in knots. It was no longer about reconciliation. It was a final attempt to break me. The atmosphere was cold, charged with expectations I refused to meet. My mom wasted no time. "Amber," she said with that syrupy sweetness that made my skin crawl, "you've made your point. Now it's time to be reasonable. This estate was meant to help all of us." I wasn't buying it. "If Grandpa wanted that," I shot back, "he would have written his will differently." Her face turned crimson. "You're tearing us apart. Grandpa didn't leave you this to be selfish." "Grandpa trusted me. I'm honoring his wishes, not your greed," I said, standing firm. My voice was steady, but inside, my heart pounded. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for everything Grandpa had built, everything he had stood for. Rachel jumped in, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't fair, Amber. Grandpa would have wanted us all to benefit equally." "Stop lying," I snapped, unable to hold back the anger. "You didn't care about Grandpa's wishes. You cared about what you could take." The silence in the room was suffocating. My mom's eyes flashed with anger, but I didn't back down. Then my stepdad, Craig, spoke in a low, cold tone. "You're playing a dangerous game, Amber. You'll lose." "I'm already losing," I said, "but I'm not backing down." I stood, ready to leave. This isn't family anymore. It's control, and I'm done. The days after the dinner felt like a constant battle. My phone buzzed with texts from my mom, Craig, and even Rachel, each message more manipulative than the last. "You'll regret this, Amber." My mom's voice rang in my head as her texts flooded in. "This is tearing our family apart." The guilt trips were endless, but each one only made me more determined to stand my ground. It wasn't just the messages. My mom showed up at my apartment unannounced, standing at the door with a forced smile. "Amber, please," she begged, her voice trembling with fake sincerity. "We're family. Don't do this." I didn't let her in. I couldn't. I refused to let her manipulate me anymore. Then came the phone call I'd been expecting. Craig, drunk off his mind, left a voicemail that chilled me to the bone. "You think you've won, huh?" His voice was slurred, menacing. "You won't get away with this. We'll make sure of it." The words stung, but they only fueled the fire inside me. I couldn't let them break me. I knew I needed backup. Samantha, the lawyer Ethan had recommended, had been my lifeline. She assured me my case was strong, that Grandpa's will was airtight. She advised me to document everything. "They'll try to tear you down," she said, "but you have the truth on your side." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore, and I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. The moment I stepped into the courtroom, I felt my heart race. It wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a war for my dignity, my grandfather's legacy, and my right to stand up to the family that had betrayed me. The air was thick with tension. My mom sat there, her eyes cold, her lawyer already preparing to attack. I clenched my fists. This wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. My mother's lawyer went first, painting me as the villain. He claimed I had manipulated Grandpa, taking advantage of his failing health to secure the inheritance. His words cut deep, but I stood tall. I had the evidence: Grandpa's journal entries, letters from his trusted friends, documents that proved Grandpa's decision had been clear, and it wasn't influenced by anyone. It was his choice. I wasn't going to let them rewrite his story. When it was my turn to speak, I felt every eye on me. My voice wavered at first, but then I found my strength. "This isn't about money," I said, looking directly at my mom. "This is about honoring Grandpa's wishes. He trusted me, and I'm not going to betray him." The silence that followed was deafening. The judge, who had been quiet throughout, finally spoke, acknowledging the evidence I had presented. I knew I'd won. But as the proceedings continued, I realized it wasn't just a legal victory. It was a personal one. I had reclaimed my power. The judge's ruling hit me like a wave. Relief, shock, and empowerment all at once. Amber Matthews is entitled to the entirety of the inheritance, as her grandfather clearly intended. The words echoed in my ears, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I had fought, not just for money, but for something much more valuable: my own sense of justice and the integrity of my grandfather's legacy. The battle wasn't over, but this was the moment I knew I had taken back control. As I walked out of the courtroom, I saw the disbelief in my mother's eyes. It wasn't the victory I expected. There was no triumph in her defeat. But as I left, there was a strange calmness in me. I had done the right thing, no matter the cost. I had honored Grandpa's memory and stood up for what was mine. Jason was waiting for me outside. His face was softer than it had been during our last conversation. "You were right," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. I see it now. I didn't get it before, but I do now. I nodded, grateful for his understanding, but the battle wasn't over yet. The rest of the family might not have agreed with me, but I had made my stand. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect. The legacy of my grandfather had been preserved, and I had emerged stronger than ever. The days following the court ruling felt like I was living in a different world. I had won, but the emotional aftermath was far from over. My mother's relentless calls and messages didn't stop. Every day, my phone lit up with texts accusing me of destroying the family, of dishonoring Grandpa's memory. But the more they came, the clearer it became. This wasn't about family. This was about power. And I wasn't going to give them that power anymore. Jason kept reaching out, his messages filled with support. "You were right all along," he wrote. "I see what Mom's been doing now." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. Slowly, my brother was coming to terms with the truth, and that gave me some peace. Then came the real shock. One night, after a particularly brutal voicemail from my mom, I found a letter in the mail. It was from Grandpa's lawyer, his final instructions. It felt like a sign. Grandpa had left me more than just money. He had left me a purpose, a legacy I was meant to protect. And that's exactly what I was going to do. I knew now, more than ever, that the battle wasn't over. It wasn't about the inheritance. It was about preserving the values Grandpa had instilled in me. I was going to rebuild what he had started, on my terms. The world may have tried to break me, but I had finally found my strength. And I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. As I stood on the steps of the courthouse, the weight of the battle started to settle in. I had won, but it felt like a hollow victory. The phone calls, the accusations, and the emotional toll. Would it ever stop? My family was fractured, and the future seemed uncertain. I walked back to my apartment, numb but determined. I had my grandfather's legacy in my hands, but I also had the scars of a battle fought with those I should have trusted the most. The next few days were a blur of business meetings, lawyers, and the looming threat of my family's next move. But amidst it all, there was a small sense of calm. For the first time in years, I was in control. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for the future, for my grandfather's vision, and for myself. One evening, I sat down to go over the estate, and a thought crossed my mind. What if this had all been a test? What if Grandpa had known, in his own way, that this would happen, and had left me with a challenge I was meant to face alone? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about inheritance. It was about resilience, about standing tall when everyone else tried to bring you down. I wasn't going to let this battle break me. I would rebuild. I would thrive. The road ahead wasn't easy, but I was ready to walk it. And this time, I wouldn't be walking alone. As the days passed, the emotional tension began to shift. My mother's calls had become fewer, and the pressure from Craig started to weaken. But there was still one lingering thought that haunted me: my family. Despite everything that had happened, a part of me longed for things to go back to normal. The guilt weighed heavily on me. Was I really doing the right thing by standing up to them? Then, one day, something changed. Jason, my younger brother, came over unannounced. I wasn't sure what to expect. After all, he had been so torn between taking sides. But this time, there was something different in his eyes. He sat down beside me, his expression a mix of resolve and regret. "I was wrong, Amber," he said quietly. "I didn't understand before, but I get it now. Grandpa trusted you, and I see why you couldn't give in." His words felt like a weight being lifted off my chest. Jason had always been the neutral one, never wanting to get caught in the family drama. Now he was standing by me, finally seeing the truth for what it was. It wasn't about money or control. It was about doing what was right. I know it hasn't been easy, he continued, but you're doing the right thing. We may not agree on everything, but you're honoring Grandpa's legacy. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. The next few days were a blur of frustration and uncertainty. My mother had backed off, but I knew it wasn't over. The pressure from her and Craig hadn't vanished completely. One evening, as I was sitting alone in my apartment, I got a text that froze me in my tracks. "We've filed a lawsuit. See you in court." My heart sank. The moment I'd been dreading had arrived. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a full-scale war. I thought I had prepared for everything, but now it felt real. I immediately called Samantha, the lawyer I had hired. Her calm demeanor was a small comfort amidst the chaos. "Amber, you're not alone in this. We've got the evidence, and I'll make sure your grandfather's wishes are honored," she reassured me. Her words gave me a moment of clarity. I started to gather all the documents, Grandpa's journals, letters, and every piece of evidence that proved he was of sound mind when making his will. It was more than just legal protection. It was my way of proving that this wasn't about the money. It was about respect, about honoring my grandfather's legacy and standing up for what was right. When the day of the hearing came, I knew I was ready. My family might have thought they could break me, but I wasn't going to let them. With every legal argument, every piece of evidence, I was reclaiming not just what was mine, but my sense of self-worth and dignity. The courtroom was tense. I'd prepared for this moment for weeks, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold stares from my family, or the weight of standing up to my own mother in front of a judge. Samantha stood by my side, her steady presence reminding me why I was here. This wasn't just a battle for money. This was a fight for my future and my grandfather's honor. When my turn came, I stood tall and faced the judge. I wasn't going to let the lies and manipulations tear me down anymore. I calmly laid out every detail: Grandpa's will, his journals, and the countless ways he had shown he wanted me to inherit his legacy. Every word I spoke felt like a final declaration that I wasn't backing down. As the judge deliberated, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. My family might have tried to destroy me, but I knew I was doing the right thing. The truth was on my side. Then, the verdict came. The will stands. Amber Matthews is entitled to the inheritance, as her grandfather clearly intended. In that moment, the weight lifted. I wasn't just inheriting money, I was inheriting my strength. I had fought not only for Grandpa's legacy, but for my own dignity, for respect, and for the right to make my own choices. Standing up for yourself is never easy, especially when it's your own family trying to tear you down. But I learned that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones worth fighting. If you've ever had to stand up for what's right against all odds, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories of triumph, betrayal, and the power of fighting back.